all over the world. Welcome to episode of Lazio Lounge. We have a problem, and unfortunately, the problem is not Alistair McKenzie because, again, last night Lazio performance was dreadful. Alistair, you just woke up. It looks like we keep struggling in Netherlands. It's like a nightmare playing there. We always lose, but not only we lose, we play badly. I mean, yesterday we did everything to let Feyenoord win, which Feyenoord is a good team. They didn't need our help, right?
I mean, you could say we struggle in and insert pretty much every European country apart from Scotland, given our terrible away record in Europe. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a good performance, wasn't a good result. It's thrown the entire Champions League campaign into jeopardy in the sense that I think we have to win our two home games for sure at this point. And yeah, I mean, it was a bit demoralizing, I think, judging by some of the comments we've had. So just put out a tweet last night asking people what they thought. And summary, not very optimistic.
No. Well, we needed to win anyway these two home games that are coming. We are going to play Feyenoord on not next week, the week afterwards, and then there's the derby on Sunday. And then afterwards, we have a break, and then there's Celtic at home. So we need to win those two games to have an opportunity. If we win those two games and Atletico beat Feyenoord away, it should be done. We should be qualified. But yesterday, the thing that annoyed me more is that we pretty much didn't try. I mean, we knew it was hard. We knew that Feyenoord away, it's a difficult game. But at least in the first 60 minutes, we didn't even try to win it or to defend ourselves, I would say.
The first half was really poor. The first half was terrible. And I think there's a few different things that people have picked up on about what to get frustrated about here. Sarri has come in for quite a lot of criticism. I don't think he got the team selection right, but that became pretty clear pretty quickly. On top of that, I think such a regular frustration we hear from people is the kind of attitude of the team, I guess. And I'm not sure I really felt that so much last night, that they weren't trying. It's just that they were outclassed. And I think perhaps it took people by surprise a bit that Feyenoord were as good as they were. But, last night I tweeted that Feyenoord basically beat Lazio at their own game, or at least at the game that Lazio are wanting to play. They play a 4-3-3. They are technically very sound. They're capable of playing through a press. They press well themselves as a unit. They defend well as a unit. They suffocate the space on the pitch. And that's what Lazio want to be doing, but they couldn't. They were just worse at that. The Lazio pressing game in the first half was terrible. I mean, you had one player going up to press by himself and nobody else following, and the two passes and they were through. And I don't know, they couldn't go through the middle of the pitch because they kept losing the ball. So we kept seeing them do the same thing every time, which is kind of move it wide and then try and clip it forward and lose the ball and then have another attack.
Again, Feyenoord is a very good team. I saw them against Atletico and they didn't deserve to lose against Atletico. But, I mean, Maruzic was always out of position. Casale made me look like Jimenez was Mbappe yesterday. Come on. I mean, Casale was dreadful. And the first goal they disallowed, again, Maruzic is out of position. They're a good team. They have a couple of very skilled players. But if you make mistakes yourself, then it's going to be too easy for them. This is where the problem was. And the other thing is, in the second half, you're down 2-0. You have nothing to lose. I think the first shot on target, we had it at the penalty. So even in the second half, we didn't pretty much do anything. And I know a lot of people will blame Cheeto for that, but don't think it's all Cheeto, right?
I disagree about that. I think the second half we did see an improvement. and they did get themselves back into the game. We started seeing Lazio actually getting a foothold and start playing a bit more, getting some possession, creating more chances. And by the end of the game, they had created a decent amount of chances. And I thought the bench made a decent impact when it came on. The problem was that it was kind of too little too late by that point, because they left themselves with such a mountain to climb. And they've been warned as well. Early on, there's a big chance for Jimenez. Then there was the disallowed goal, which was very tight offside call.
Yeah.
Then they had that shout for a handball in the box. Which obviously wasn't. But what I mean is there were all these kind of warnings, like, you need to sort yourselves out here, because the pressure is only growing, and they couldn't. And so the thing I found most upsetting about the first half was that it was kind of a flashback to the Lazio we saw at the first few weeks of the season, where there were lots of individual mistakes happening. They weren't defending well as a unit. They weren't pressing well as a unit. They weren't creating chances. Whereas I thought in the second half that they were playing more like they have been recently, definitely, but just it wasn't good enough. I think that for me was the main difference.
Obviously, we have to talk about the selection. Were you surprised? Because in the two Champions League game, our midfield has always been Kamada, Vecino, Luis Alberto. Instead, yesterday, Sarri completely changed everything, right? Because Rovella started his first game in the Champions League. Luis Alberto is always there, and Vecino was moved a little bit forward, and things didn't work out. I thought Rovella had a decent first half, but was booked, and that's why he went off during the half break. But why did we change if things work, right? We beat Celtic, we draw against Atletico Madrid. Why changing our midfield?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's why I think Sarri's being criticised a bit. It's almost like he was preparing for a different game than the one he got. I don't think Vecino was really the man for that match, and you could see how badly dominated the team was being in possession. It was a very compact game. In the middle of the pitch, there wasn't much space, and that was also to do with the way Feyenoord were playing. But I think when the game's like that, you need your best technical players on the pitch, really, the ones who have the coolest heads, who see the space, who know how to work the ball under pressure. And I don't think we really had that, because even when it was being worked out to the fullbacks, you mentioned Marisic before, he's not a guy who's particularly great with his feet. I think Lazio made a decent impact when he came on, just to open up the game a little bit. And his directness seemed to actually cause them a bit of problems, because it's not something that was happening from the Lazio team before then. Castellanos, Chiro was invisible in that first half. I don't necessarily blame him for that, because the ball was so rarely in his part of the pitch. Then again, you might want to see him dropping deeper, getting involved, finding other ways of trying to get into the game. Castellanos missed an absolute sitter when he first came on, and that's a potentially game-changing moment.
Yeah.
If that goes in, and at first I thought, oh, it's an awkward bounce, it's come behind him, he's just reacted. But then you see the replay and like, oh, actually, he did have a bit more time to consider that than it looked like. So that was a bad miss, and a real shame, because I feel like if Lazio had scored at that particular moment, they had a chance. But in the end, well beaten.
Do you think there is a problem in this team? I mean, yesterday we mentioned Feyenoord is a very good team, great atmosphere, etc. Do you think that Sarri is right saying that this team, especially in the first half, didn't play at the level, were scared about our opponent, were afraid of playing there?
It didn't look like that. I mean, to be honest, so I'm going to try and get to some of the comments we've had, but there's just so many. Like always with a defeat is like this. But yeah, I mean, more of what people seem to be upset about is, rather than being overawed or scared by it, it's more that they were kind of lazy about it, and that kind of attitude of, oh, we've won a few games now, so we can just turn up. And I don't really believe the team feels that way. I can't believe that. But this is a repeated theme, that people look at them that way sometimes, where it's just doesn't look sharp enough, doesn't look focused enough. I guess the thing is, it feels like this team lacks a bit of grinta, where they really need to realize they're in a game. There are no away fans there. They're in a fight. They're at a stadium where they were throwing cups full of piss at Sari last year. They're
Yeah,
there to fight. They're there for a street fight, not to not to pass the ball around and have fun. So maybe there was a bit more of that attitude needed. I don't know.
definitely. And what about Felipe Anderson? Because we didn't mention him, but after being one of the best on the pitch against Sassuolo this weekend, he was pretty much the invisible man yesterday night.
Well, we said it, didn't we? I mean, that's why I said after the Sassuolo game, okay, let's not get too excited about this because this is what he does. So, yeah, I think he can struggle a bit in those kind of games though, where it's a bit more of a battle and there's a bit less space on the pitch. I don't know, and I think picking the wrong pass at the wrong time, there was a little bit of that. Yeah, I don't really know. Well, I think that there can be a few changes made for the second game against them. I think there will be lessons learned. I can't imagine that Lazio will be this bad twice in this fixture because Sarri will have a lot to see from that first half. And he said it himself that it wasn't good enough.
Funny enough, Alistair, last year, our best game in Europe was Lazio Feyenoord. We won 4-2 at home, but
Yeah.
we were like 4-0 with 15 minutes to go, and then we fall asleep a little bit. But our worst game was Feyenoord Lazio. Do you think it's going to be the same thing this year? And is there a reason, or do you think it's just coincidence?
This guy, Santiago Jimenez, he's killing us. I think this is the main problem. We need to hope that he pulls a muscle in the week before the game. I mean, he's scored 5 times against us in 3 games over the last year.
And I agree, but come on, the 2 goals was ridiculous. The first one is Izai that deflects the ball that is going somewhere else. The second one, I don't know what Casale is doing. He's like not doing nothing to defend.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. I mean, at the beginning, I was happy because I thought, Jimenez is physical. Let's put a big player, a big body like Casale. But now I'm regretting it. I mean, Patrick would have been definitely a much better option. We see the passion of Patrick playing. So, probably he will have struggled a little bit, but not as bad as Casale did yesterday. And this leads me to the question, Alison. This year, Casale is really struggling. It's not only the beginning of the season. We are end of October. And yes, in Rome it's still hot, but it's end of October. It's not allowed to Casale to be still in this bad shape. It's time to bench him.
Well, okay, yeah. It's a bad game. Perhaps it is time he sat out a game, but this is the problem area of the team. I'm sorry, but Patrick is Patrick. He's a reliable enough player, but we just don't have enough depth there. And I've been saying this since the transfer market was open. By the way, this is not me in retrospect. I think that is essentially the issue: is that if Casale isn't performing, there's Patrick and there's Gila behind him. It's not like there's loads of pressure being applied. Perhaps Patrick is worthy of starting more games than he has been and being higher up that pecking order.
Do you think Gila needs a start? I mean, next Monday, there's a difficult match against Fiorentina. It's a match we need to win. Now, not only for the table, for Serie A table, but even because after this bad defeat, players have to show a sign that they are there, they are fully committed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just looking at some of the comments here we've had. So Leo picked out the body language, lack of intensity, lack of focus. There's Andrina says, no intensity, no inspiration, no focus. There was another comment about, let me just find it. Yeah, Sarri should worry less about the chalkboard and more about desire. I mean, this is something we touched on at the start, but how do you think that is a problem in this team? Because it is something we've talked about for so long, going back to Inzaghi as well, by the way. This hasn't just been a talking point under Sarri, but this idea that this team can be quite complacent in its attitude.
I know you don't agree, but I think there are players like Marzic that have everything to exceed, but play with really no grit, as you mentioned before. He's really playing. Casale as well. They asked Sarri, probably was better to start with Pellegrini instead of Maruzic, and he said I needed more defensive mind, left back. But at least Pellegrini is a fighter. You could see this year he took like 2 yellow cards because of protest to the referee. I think Pellegrini should play these games because he's more focused, he's more willing to fight. While Maruzic, it's not a fighter. Casale doesn't look to be a fighter.
Patrick is.
Felipe Anderson, again, is not a fighter. I don't know if Isaacson is, but Pedro definitely has the experience. And he showed it. When he came in, Lazio suddenly switched on, right? We had a penalty. We created a couple of chances, all when Pedro was in. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think there are players in that team that are. I mean, Stefan Radu was the greatest example of this, perhaps, and obviously he's no longer there. But then again, it's not like this didn't happen when Stefan Radu was in the squad. So it does take a bit of leadership as well as just. But I think people do follow that example, and we've kind of laughed a bit about Patrick being the guy who's pumping his fist to the crowd all the time and stuff, but I think that can have an impact. That can, rub off on the players around you. And I think some of the new signings, Guendouzi, Castellanos, they do look to have a bit of that about them as well. You're right about Pellegrini. I think that's a good shout. But I don't think that's something that's so easy to instill.
No, you cannot instill it. You have to have it, right? It's not something that you can teach, learn, or as you say in Italy, buy at the supermarket. The players simply have it when he's 8 years old till when he dies, right? And the other thing important is you were mentioning Radu. Yes, but you play 11 aside. So you cannot just have one fighter. You have to have at least 8, because if you play 11, it's not one is not enough. You have to have a bunch of them starting, and this is the difference for Lazio.
One of the final things, because I'm afraid it's going to have to be a bit of a shorter podcast today, but one of the final things I wanted to pick up on was from Matt Gandini, because and this is I think a talking point that's come up quite a lot beyond Lazio as well, about, he said, the results aside, what struck me about this game and in Glasgow was the difference in pace and intensity from the start. Is this a Lazio problem, or is it an Italy/Serie A problem? And I think this is something people talk about generally around Italian teams in the Champions League, is the style of play in Serie A. It is a more patient game. It is a more tactical game. Is that a problem in Europe? Well, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. But the thing, Alistair, is even physically, right? Our players are not like in the Premier League. I mean, the example is Lukaku. Lukaku with Inter scored hundreds of goals, then goes in the Premier League and is shut down. So this tells you. And every time Lazio plays in the Champions League, you can see the other players running 3 times faster than us, moving more than our players. And it's funny because every weekend I hear the Serie A commentators saying, what a pace this game. No, it's not. Change channel, go and watch every single Premier League game. It's like, it's like you're going fast forward. No, it's not fast forward. It's simply they are running 3 times more than we do. And in the Champions League, you see it every single game. I mean, Celtic was running more than us. Feyenoord was running more than us. Atletico Madrid, nearly close to us. But Atletico Madrid is a different game, a different type of game. But every time Azzeda last year was running more than us, every European team runs more on the pitch than a Serie A club.
And I think this is one of the reasons why, for example, like a Gasperini Atalanta team or a De Zerbi Sassuolo team have had success in Italy, is that they have been more proactive in their style and less traditionally Italian, let's say. I think that perhaps there is a need for more intensity, and it's certainly in European games, the preparation for that at least, because I think, if you watch the Sassuolo game over the weekend, for example, there is a kind of element of settling into those matches which you don't necessarily get in Champions League, where it's not a million miles an hour from the start. I think Serie A is probably faster than people think it is at times. Like, you do get some fantastic tempo matches in Serie A, but usually not for the full 90 minutes.
No.
Both teams like to settle in generally a little bit. And that was the problem I think Lazio found last night, was from the very start of that game, they were up against it and they had no settling in time. They couldn't get comfortable. They couldn't get possession. They couldn't find a way to play until the second half.
Yeah, and you need to move the ball faster if you play against that type of team. And Lazio absolutely didn't do it. Again, going back to Sassuolo, I thought the first 20 minutes was a very slow match, and this definitely helped Lazio's skills. When teams step up and play faster, we struggle. Luis Alberto is the typical example, right? When football move faster, when team move faster, he struggled. We saw it against Atalanta, and we saw it yesterday. He pretty much disappeared yesterday. So we need solution. Probably Kamada would have been a better option. Guendouzi is another solution. Vecino is not a fast-paced player. So, probably we needed to change players.
Yeah. I mean, it's all very well saying things in hindsight, I guess, but it does look like Sarri got his selection a bit wrong, or the preparation wasn't right as well. I mean, look, you have to say they were the better team. They did. They played a lot better. They deserved the win. We're not saying, anything else in that regard, but I think you still have to look at the squad Lazio have got and feel that there was a better combination out there and a better mental preparation to be done, perhaps, to get at least a better performance.
Yeah.
So in 2 weeks, they have to be a lot better in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I it's true what you said, and I think that they are a very good team at home. It's a different type of team away, and I hope we're gonna have sold out Stadio Olimpico, because we need to win the next two games. It's pretty much that. If Lazio beat Feyenoord and Celtic at home, and Atletico beats Feyenoord away, we are qualified. If Atletico Madrid doesn't win away against Feyenoord, then we need a draw against Atletico away, or we hope that Celtic will stop Feyenoord in the last game, which is possible because it's Celtic Feyenoord, it's at home. And I guess Celtic want to finish the Champions League not with a defeat at home, right?
Yeah, I think they did us a bit of a favour last night. I mean, that was a fantastic game. I don't know if you saw any of that, but they played so well and it started absolutely ferociously fast again. So I think that a draw in that game is a big helpful result for Lazio, because it keeps things nice and tight, which at the halfway stage is not the worst thing, because we still have, like you say, two home games to go. So yeah, we don't need to get depressed about this. I think this, to be in the position we're in with two home games in the last three games is pretty good. So
yeah, and Alistair, we have to say something. With the draw of yesterday, Atletico has to go to Netherlands and win, because if they won yesterday, they could even lose against Feyenoord away. But now they have to win, otherwise they will be in jeopardy. So this is good for us. I think we can wrap it up here, Alistair. Just to mention, Lazio is playing Monday night against Fiorentina. So we're not going to do the podcast on Monday. We're going to do it the day afterwards, obviously. So if you don't find us on Mondays, it's not because we forgot, but simply Lazio is playing on Monday and then on Friday. So very little time for recover for Lazio. And then there's Lazio Feyenoord, very important game. So guys, and then there's another game I don't want to mention on the weekend, but everybody know about that. So it's a 2-week stretch, very complicated for us. So we have to be close to the team and hope that they show a better performance in the next 3 games. Again, Alistair, thanks for your time. I know you're busy, and we'll catch up on Monday. Ciao.
That's one. Ciao, ciao.